from the subject of what is worth your peace. What is worth your peace? Now, the word peace has two different spellings depending upon which definition you are referring to. There is P-E-A-C-E, which generally means a state of harmony and calm. And then there's P-I-E-C-E, which has a multitude of meanings. That peace generally means a fragment of something, but it can also mean a gun. You can have a situation where someone says, you done made me lose my peace. You gave me a piece of your mind, now I'm going to go get my peace. Peace is also a vulgar term for sex or the sex act. It could also be the whole thing, such as a museum piece. There was once a farmer, and he had a large field and a lot of crops in it, but he had a nagging wife. And he often would just go out in the field to just get peace away from this nagging wife. And one day as he was sitting out in his field, his wife brought him his lunch out. And as she handed him his lunch, she just started tearing in on him, berating him about this, complaining about that, giving him a piece of her mind, just one thing after another. And he was just sitting there in the field, eating his lunch, listening to his wife just fussing at him. And his mule was standing right there, and the mule had been unhitched from the plow because he'd been doing a lot of plowing. And his wife was just going on, just going on and on and on. And finally the mule just ran up on his front legs and just kicked out his back leg and kicked the wife in the head. Killed her on the spot. So the farmer was there at the funeral, and the priest who had done the sermon, the eulogy, was noticing after the service, as the women would come up to the farmer, he would nod his head. And then every time a man came up to the farmer, he would shake his head. And he saw this going. He saw a long line of folk coming up to the farmer. Every time a woman came up, he'd nod his head. Every time a man came up, he'd shake his head. So the priest went to him after the funeral. He said, look, I noticed every time a woman came up to you, you would nod your head. But every time a man came up to you, you would shake your head. What was that all about? He said, well, every woman who came up to me told me how pretty my wife was and how nice the dress was, and I just agreed with them. And every man who came up to me asked me one question: was that mule for sale? There are basically three areas of peace, of the P-E-A-C-E type. There are basically three areas of peace, and these three areas of peace eventually evolve and meld into that major area of peace, which is peace with yourself. But the main three areas of peace that I'm going to talk about: peace with people, peace with circumstances, and peace with God. And when you can get peace with people, peace with circumstances, and peace with God, you'll have peace with yourself. Peace with people, Romans chapter 12, verses 17 through 21 says this: do not repay anyone evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everybody. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, "It is mine to avenge, I will repay, says the Lord." On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Here, Paul tells you how to be at peace with most people. What do you mean, Pastor, most? Because he leaves a caveat in there. He says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. I want you all to repeat this after me. If it is possible, as far as it depends on me, live at peace with everyone. Now, for Paul to say, if it is possible, means obviously there are some people it is impossible to be at peace with. And there are. That's just no. Some folk are not going to do right. They will push every button you got and then find some more that you didn't even know you had. They will get on your last nerve. They will do wrong. They won't do right. They're going to do all kinds of stuff that's contrary to the laws of God. There are some people where it is virtually impossible for you to be at peace. But Paul here says, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, meaning you have done everything you can possibly do to be at peace with this person. Jesus, even when the disciples came and asked him, how many times should I forgive? 70 times 7. So you got to forgive somebody 490 times a day, but on that 491st time, you got permission. You got permission to give them a piece of your mind when you get to 491. But Jesus says 70 times 7 a day. There are some people, and they will almost literally push you 490 times. So there are some people without question who are much more difficult to deal with than others. They're just some folks just an issue. There's no doubt about that. And I, with the three brothers of the word, we actually represent three of the what I would call the levels of tolerance. See, Elijah is the most peaceful person I know. He doesn't talk about anybody. No bad words come out. When I say bad words, I'm not talking about cursing words. I'm just talking about negative words, talking about people. No negative words come out of his mouth talking about people. I don't ever see him get upset. He's never angry. He's never fussing about him. He is the most peaceful person I know. If you get on see Elijah's nerve, you've got to be really, really bad. So he is the epitome of peace. He is the epitome of, I've never seen see Elijah in an argument with anybody. He is the epitome of peace. Pastor James is in the middle. He's a reasonably peaceful person, but Pastor James, you get on his nerves, he can pull out another side on you. So it's a, you know, he's reasonably peaceful. Rarely does he get upset, but sometimes he just got to put his foot down. Sometimes that just happens. And I am on that other extreme. I am by nature confrontational and a fighter. Now I have radically mellowed that over the last 20 years. But my very nature is military. That's why I'm armed to the teeth. I remember when I took my oldest son and my nephew out we went to a skeet shooting range, and none of us had ever gone before. So we had to take a shotgun. You know, they'll holler, pull, and throw the little clay discs up in the air. And after all three of us is gone, I think my son and my nephew, they hit about 5. I hit 24 out of 25. And the man said, he said, are you a pro at this? I said, no, this is my first time I've ever shot a shotgun. He's like, I've never seen anybody do that. You hit 24 out of 25. I said, I'm military. I've never shot a shotgun, but man, I'm loaded for bear. I got every kind of weapon you can think of. I said, I'm just military. I'm mild. I will literally not kill anything if I can help it. I won't kill a bug if there's an alternative with it, where I don't take life unless it's absolutely necessary. But I'm prepared if necessary. So I'm on that, and that's from my old military nature. It was just that way. It's still there, but it's buried and it's controlled, but it's there. So I do the best that I can, and I'm still struggling with that, to maintain peace in all situations. And I have radically changed from 20 years ago to where now I can maintain my peace in just about all situations if it's possible for Nathaniel Bronner to maintain his peace. So if it's possible, I do. So and see, I gave us our 3 examples because there are different natures, and some of y'all are born different. Some people are born with a different temperament than others. Some are born with a general temperament. Some are born with the temperament of a warrior. And when you got a warrior temperament, you got to struggle more to get that thing and to keep that thing under control than you do when you're born with a general. So it's peace with people is a challenge. Peace within your own home is a challenge. It's a challenge to keep peace with your spouse. It's a challenge to keep peace with your children. It's a challenge especially to keep peace, and there's so many blended families now. It's a challenge to keep peace with your stepchildren. So just keeping peace within your house. I'm not talking about keeping peace with folk on your job. I'm just talking about keeping peace in your house is a challenge. And I just want to even thank all of my, I got 4 big, strong young men. They've never fussed or reared up at their father. Never. Do you know what a blessing that is? And they probably do know, they've never seen me upset, but they do know their daddy is a warrior. They do know that. But it's just a blessing to have peace within your house. And most of the time, especially with fathers and sons, it's not peace between them daddies and sons. It's a battle constantly. And it's so many times, if you go to prison, what you will find is almost every young man in prison has an issue with his daddy. Almost everyone has an issue with his daddy. So it's just a blessing just to have peace in your house. Peace. What is it worth for your peace? Number 2 is peace with circumstances. There are circumstances. Philippians 4:6 says this: do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Do you know you need to be at a level where folk can't even understand your peace? Because stuff will go on all around you. And you need to be at a level, how are you at peace in the middle of all of this? How are you at peace in your body's acting up? How are you at peace in your money's acting up? How are you at peace in your kids acting up? How are you at peace in your spouse's acting up? How are you at peace? Look what kind of president we got. And half the folk going to look at that negative, half positive. How are you going to be at peace and look at the senatorial race we got going on? How are you at peace with all that? Some of these are external circumstances, and you've got to learn how to be at peace with circumstances. I preached a sermon called the serenity prayer that some of you may need to go back and listen. But the main thing is this. A lot of this stuff in life you don't have control of. You're only responsible for the stuff you have control over. All you're responsible for is going out and vote. Who the president is or who the senator is after that, that ain't your business. You cannot control that. But don't you dare sit there fussing about it. You didn't vote. Right. Now you need to do what you can do, and that's, I'm going to leave it all up to God. No, you get out and vote. Don't you leave it up to the Lord. That's your responsibility. We have bled and fought and died and been jailed to vote, and then folk won't get out and go vote. And then go fuss about what we got. So, no, you get out and vote. I don't care who you vote for. You just get out and vote. You do what you're supposed to do. And when you do what you are supposed to do, there's a peace that comes with that. You cannot control what you cannot control. Y'all let that sink in. You cannot control what you cannot control. You cannot control what you cannot control. Now, a lot of people don't have peace because they have not controlled what they could control and what they were supposed to control. There are some things you are supposed to do. There are some things you are supposed to be responsible for. There are some things that is in your hand, and you got to use what's in your hand, what God has ordained for you to do, and when you do that, you have peace. But a lot of this stuff you have no control over. And when you have no control over it, don't let this stuff disturb your peace. There was once a lady, and she said the way she does it like this. She said anytime she has all these issues and all these problems, she imagines them ridden on a soap bubble. And she lets all of the soap bubbles up into the air with all her different problems and issues on. And then she imagines a real problem. See, most of our problems are not real problems. She imagines a major health crisis, or she imagines something really tragic happening. And when she imagines that, all of the soap bubbles burst. Because most of our issues, in truth, they're not big. They're small. And if you went to the doctor and the doctor told you got 3 months to live, all your other problems that you've been worried about now, they're soap bubbles, they bust. Because now you're dealing with this issue. And if you imagine you got 3 months to live, now all of a sudden you're not going to die in 3 months. Then why do you let all those problems come back on you? And often we've got to learn how not to let stuff stick and stay with us and worry us that are really inconsequential. And I see how young people are sometimes so unhappy because they worry about so many things that the older people, first of all, you got to get old. So you got to be doing something right just to make it to get old. So if you get old folk don't worry about a lot of stuff young folk worry about. They just don't. I called my oldest son yesterday because I heard him leave the house. He's got this high-powered car, and I heard him just step on the gas. And I said, was that you? He said, yeah, that was me. And it was loud. But this is the point. I am so thankful he was in that car. He's never had a wreck. He's a phenomenal driver. He was loud, just like I used to be. See, I sold my motorcycle about 4 or 5 years ago. And a lot of people you see now, a lot of these young kids with these high-powered muscle cars making all this noise. But I rode a motorcycle to about 4 or 5 years ago. There is something about a motorcycle, make no sense whatsoever. But when you pull up to the traffic light on a motorcycle, now this has nothing to do with the engine. My motorcycle ran just as smooth. It has nothing to do with the engine. There's no mechanical reason for this whatsoever. But every motorcycle driver, I don't care how young or old he is, every motorcycle driver, when they pull up to the red light, they're going, boom, boom, boom. That has nothing to do with nothing. The engine doesn't need it. Matter of fact, it's bad on the engine. So it doesn't help the engine, doesn't help you take off any smoother, doesn't do anything. But I just couldn't help it. You pull up to the light, you're sitting there for a minute, boom, Boom, boom. Make no sense whatsoever. But there's something about it in a man that if he's got a powerful, loud motor, boom, 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 boom. So I'm thankful with my son. And see, that's why some of us will get more peace when we remember how we were. And we look at other folk in the way we are now, not remembering how we used to be. And I had to remember just 4 or 5 years ago, which meant I was 60-something. I'm still sitting there like, boom, boom, boom. And you understand, and when you have empathy, your peace, because some of us don't have peace because we are too judgmental and self-righteous. And it causes us all kinds of issues. And the third thing is you need peace with God. Isaiah 26:3. You will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is steadfast because he trusts in you. You keep in perfect peace he whose mind is steadfast in you. If you trust in God, that's one reason I can go anywhere. And I just don't worry about it. Because I trust in God. I know God's got me as long as I do what he tells me to do. Hardly anything bothers me. If you believe God controls everything, if you believe God is omnipotent and omniscient, if you believe he's all-powerful and all-knowing, and he trusts in you, why should you not have peace? The worst that can happen to you is that you die. And if you trust in God, you're going to heaven. So why should you have all of this turmoil about all of this stuff and you believe in an all-powerful, all-knowing God and you trust in God? What is your peace worth? Will you allow the news to take your peace? Will you allow a job to take your peace? Will you allow a person to take your peace? There's a quote that goes, he who angers you controls you. When you let a person take your peace, they control you. And today From Brothers of